Yo, it's Dave. So I passed my first year of architecture school. In this video, I want to give you some of the biggest lessons that I learned from the year. So let's talk about it. Alright, so number one, time management. There's no secret that architecture school is one of the hardest majors to graduate with in college. It just is. When going into architecture school, I was already doing architecture for 4 years in high school. Once I knew I was going to UTSA to study architecture, I tried to prepare myself by looking up videos on YouTube and doing some light studying during the summer. But I'll be the first one to say it, I'm gonna be honest, there is nothing that can prepare you for what your first year and especially what your first semester is going to be like in architecture school. There's nothing that I can tell you that will substantially help you throughout the entire year. So it's one of those things where you really just have to experience it and just learn with every new day. But as an incoming freshman, you definitely want to have the mindset that things are going to be hard and things are going to get harder. I think my best tip of advice though is definitely to create a really well-rounded schedule. You really want to be really tedious about the schedule. This is kind of something that I started developing in the summer going into freshman year, and I think it really kept me along with my work and helped me have a balanced workflow. Making a schedule really helped out deciding, okay, I'm gonna do this at this time, I'm gonna do this at this time, and this is more important than that. So if this takes longer than I think it's gonna take, then I need to keep doing it during this time type of deal. So once you just figure that stuff out, once you figure out, your schedule and how you want to manage things, then it's gonna become a lot easier. Okay, so number two, the creative process. Your creative process is definitely something that you're gonna be doing the most out of the year while in architecture school. So I kind of want to put down some points here of the biggest steps that I take in my creative process to get me to my final product. So one is definitely sketching. Sketching is probably the most useful tool in the creative process because it's really where you start, Usually when you get a new project, the first thing that every architect student does is open up their sketchbook and just start drawing in there or, writing things down, trying to figure out, okay, how can I be super creative in this project and what can I do here, what can I do there, blah, 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 blah. But the second thing I would say to do is to capture that very first idea. So I feel like this might be a little bit controversial in saying because I feel like people will tell you to work with many ideas because you want to have the most creativity possible. But in my opinion, in architecture school, especially that first semester, you do not have time to really mess around with a lot of ideas. Usually when students do that, their final product just comes out really messy and their ideas aren't very clear because it was just so scattered along multiple ideas. Really, I think the best thing to do is to have this first idea and to work off of that first idea. Of course, it's going to change over time, but the best thing to do is to really focus on one thing that you really, really like and then just build upon that and then scrape stuff off along that first idea. Third thing I would say is to work off critiques. So in architecture school, you're gonna get a lot, and I mean a lot of critiques from your professor, which is a good thing, but you have to be able to sit there and understand that your professor who is giving you these critiques is trying to make your project better. And you want to work off of those critiques given. Because once you do that, your project just starts to become a lot more complete. Okay, so number three is working with other students. Okay, so this is really important, especially when it comes to the group project, which you will have in your first year. For me, it happened in my first semester, but for you, it's definitely gonna happen in the first year. And so this is just a huge stage of what your first year is. It's probably gonna take about a month for this group project where you're gonna be seeing all your group members every single day for an entire month, and things just get crazy, to be honest. I would say the biggest two things that I learned when working in this group project is that these people are different from you, right? You know, even though they're in the same major as you, they have different goals, they have different wants, just have different things that they want to do. And so you just kind of have to cater to what they want to do and not make them cater to what you want to do. Honestly, I would say a majority of the grade in this group project is the relationship that you have with your group members. I think that's the biggest part of it, and that's really the only thing that the professors care about. The only thing that the professors are looking for during this group project is, can you work with other students? You know, up till this point, the professors are seeing you work with yourself, so they know what you can do. In this project, they don't really care if, you know, your project is the best, or if, you know, you're doing the most, or blah, 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 blah. They don't care about any of that, actually. It's such a low majority of the grade, it's actually crazy. If you can have a good relationship with, you know, your classmates and they say good things about you, then that's really what, you know, makes the grade for you. And so with the group project, you really do have to sacrifice of, okay, instead of making this the best it can be, how can I make the relationships the best they can be in this group project? That's really what you have to focus on. And if you can do that, then you're gonna get a really high grade on that project. So wow, it is so hot outside. Okay. All right, number 4 is cater to your professors. So I feel like this one might come off controversial, because I've heard a lot of people say, you know, your college years in architecture are the time where you're going to be most free to make the creative decisions that you want to make, because once you get to the job scenario, you'll have to do what your boss tells you. And this is true to a certain extent, right? Because your professor, who's the one giving you these critiques, is also going to be the one that is grading your project. So one, like I already said, take criticism. When they say something, do it. You know, but you still want to have your own creativity with it, so just do it with your own spin. If they tell you to do something, take it and then make it your own. You just have to be smart about it. But let's say that, you know, a professor gives you just a terrible critique and you don't like it, you think it's going to make the project 10 times worse. And while it rarely happens where a professor, you know, who spent their entire lives doing architecture, you know, that's why they are a professor, so they're probably good at their job. It happens, you know, where they just give a bad critique. It just does happen. If you rebel, make it make sense. Make it justified to what you do. When you're presenting your project, your professor is going to try to poke as many holes in what they don't like. So you already have to think about what they're gonna say and what your response is going to be, because you definitely don't want to be sitting there when you're asked something about your project and I don't know, I haven't really thought about it that far. That's the worst thing that you could say. Literally say anything else besides I don't know, I have not thought about that. All right, number 5, explore and practice. So this one is one that I feel like a lot of people don't think about, but it's really important. You know, they call architecture a practitioner for a reason. You're always going to be practicing it, no matter what level of an architect you are. And I'll be the first one to say it, it's not easy to make time to explore and practice on your own, because you're always going to be focusing on a project. And if you're not focusing on a project, you're probably working a part-time job. And if you're not working a part-time job, you're probably spending time with family and friends. And if you're not doing that, you're asleep, you know? So it's hard to put in that extra time of, okay, let me sit down an extra hour and, you know, let me read this book on architecture, or, you know, let me go outside to downtown and let me just sketch, you know? Like, it's hard to do. It's hard to do that. It is. It really, really is. But that's what makes the difference between becoming a really, really good architect and becoming a great one. And, you know, this will determine how much, you know, you like architecture. You know, if it becomes from a passion to an obsession, you know? I would just say become curious, you know, about the thing that you want to do for the rest of your life. You know, you should want to become curious. You should want to learn pretty much everything that there is to know about, and you're always going to be learning about architecture. So it's just, you know, if you slide over 20-30 minutes extra of time to, you know, sketching or you know, looking up an architecture book, which there is plenty of open sources to do so, then, you know, it really does make all the difference. But I mean, yeah guys, those are the 5 biggest lessons that I learned during my first year, and there's definitely a lot more lessons, and I probably could have got a lot more in depth into some of these, but I just wanted to keep this short and keep y'all's retention span the longest I could. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see, you know, more things that I learned my freshman year, like this video, comment, you know, do something if you want to see more. So it's been Dave. Peace.